Welcome to Mach 10 Sports in this January 4th, 2024 year. Crazy to say. It's always that time of year where you're still getting a little mixed up. Hey, 2023 was it? No, you got to transition. Take a couple episodes. I was thinking when I was breaking this episode in, I was thinking, on Tuesday's episode, when we were reviewing the Rose Bowl, did I say 23? I may have. But we're going 2024. Yes, January 4th, year of our Lord, 2024. Appreciate you joining us. We've had a ton happen since last Tuesday's episode. It's only been 2 days. It's only been 2 days. A lot of movement around the SEC from a coaching standpoint. We've had coaches go transfer from I think use the word transfer. There we go right there. We have coaches going from one SEC school to another. We'll discuss it. We have LSU right now. They have 2 open coordinator spots. Greg Denbrock moving on to Notre Dame. Brian Kelly letting go of the whole defensive staff led by defensive coordinator Matt House. So LSU has 2 openings on that staff right now. Been a crazy transfer portal window. It ended last night at midnight, but compliance offices have 48 hours to process the paperwork, and boom, around lunchtime today, if you follow college football at all or you've been living under a rock, you hadn't missed it. He is the cover picture of this episode. Quinshon Judkins, the running back from Ole Miss, is entered the transfer portal. Talking to people at Ole Miss, this is not a surprise. Kind of expected it for some things that have gone on behind the scenes. We'll talk about that stuff. Again, you'll probably see some more guys enter the transfer portal from a social media standpoint, but they've got the paperwork in by the 4th. But again, the compliance offices have 48 hours, and sometimes when it's an opposing and they don't want a kid to transfer, these compliance departments will kind of drag their feet. It's opening weekend of conference play starting on Saturday. It's 48 hours, less than 48 hours. I mean, we'll already know some of the results of Arkansas, Auburn. I'm fired up about. We'll be in the middle of Ole Miss at Tennessee. Can the Rebs stay undefeated heading to Thompson-Boling Arena? What's that? We got Florida, Kentucky. We'll be done by now. So 48 hours away from having our first action completed on the hardwood. We'll preview all 7 matchups. Then I was thinking, I hate to do this early, but I was just sitting around yesterday, last night, watching a movie with my father-in-law. I was reading off the schedules to him. He's a big Tennessee fan. I was reading off the schedule and trying to get him to give me a prediction for Tennessee. We're here at my in-laws. If you haven't noticed, if you're a normal watcher of the show, usually we have the Mach 10 logo on the TV in the background with our home studio. But we've been at the in-laws for 2 weeks. We've got a newborn baby. Story for another day. My point being, me and my father-in-law were breaking down the 2024 schedules. Again, way too early. Way too early. A lot of roster updates is going to happen from now. And then we even got the spring portal window after spring ball. And again, going throughout the summer. But I want to talk about the most important game on all 16 teams' schedules next year in the SEC. Remember, unless you've been living under the rock, you probably missed the Quinshon Judkins news, and you probably don't know Oklahoma and Texas are coming to the league. And Lord be with you if you don't. But we're 16. We got to start saying 16. I was messing with my guys over at Southeastern 14. They have to rebrand their name to Southeastern 16. Again, it's that time. Again, we're finishing up basketball. This will be our last basketball season without Oklahoma, Texas. Obviously, last baseball season in the spring. But now we can officially start talking about the Sooners and Longhorns in the same breath as the Alabama, Georgias, LSU's, Texas A&M, Ole Misses of the world in the SEC, fellow SEC brother. So I'm going to give you the most important game as we stand today on January 4th for every SEC team, all 16 teams. But let's get to it. Coaching moves around the SEC. Coaching moves around the SEC. LSU, they let go of their whole defensive staff, starting with defensive coordinator Matt House, defensive line coach Jimmy Lindsey, corners coach Robert Steeples, and safeties coach Kerry Cooks. They're out. To go along with it, it's kind of flying under the radar too. We're not talking about they got an opening on offense. And I know it's probably because out of sight, out of mind, the offense was so good this year and the defense was so bad. I think people want to be, hey, how do we fix this leaking hole of our ship, this massive leaking hole, the size of probably the same size that the Titanic had after the iceberg. It was a massive gaping hole in this LSU team this year. That was the defense led by Matt House. So I think LSU fans are just kind of eager. How do we fix that? Yeah, I mean, you've heard some couple of names thrown around. Blake Baker, Brandon Marcello from 247 Sports reported he's a leading target, keyword leading target, not candidate. So keep that in mind when you're following the breaking news people on college football. They do a fantastic job. Lance Guidry is another name, the defensive coordinator at Miami, I've heard tossed around. I would give Jesse Minter, Michigan's defensive coordinator, a call. I thought he had a fantastic game plan, did something no one had been doing to Jalen Milroe and the Alabama offense at the end of the year, being aggressive, not sitting back and letting Jalen Milroe have as much time as possible. Remember, Jalen Milroe held on to the ball the second longest of any quarterback in the country this year with 3.25 seconds. He made him make quick decisions, and he looked uncomfortable all night. So I like what Jesse Minter does at Michigan. I would make him say no. But those are kind of the three names I've heard. Lance Guidry, the defensive coordinator at Miami. Blake Baker seems like a big one. He was there with Ed Orgeron in 2021 as the inside linebackers coach. LSU fans will remember Damone Clark was not a good good linebacker. Blake Baker got there. He developed, turned into a good player for the Dallas Cowboys. So I think he's a good developer. He helped lead a pretty good defense. This is his second year at Missouri under Eli Drinkwitz. Again, as you know, he finished 11-2, won the Cotton Bowl, beating Ohio State. So LSU got a lot of question marks in that coaching staff. That'll be something to monitor. A former Alabama wide receiver coach, you can say former now, Holloman Wiggins, heading to Texas A&M to join Mike Elko and his crew. Holloman had been there since 19, just off the top of my head. Inherited that good room of Jalen Waddle, Devontae Smith, John Mechie, Jameson Williams. He recruited Jameson Williams out of the portal. His two big hits would probably, you'd say, were you throw Isaiah Bond. His best high school class was the 22 class with Isaiah Bond and Kobe Prentice. But he had bigger success out of the portal with Jameson Williams, getting him from Ohio State, as we all remember, and then also Jermaine Burton coming over from Georgia. But again, I think a little bit underwhelming from a closing standpoint at wide receiver, at the wide receiver position, especially out of the high school ranks. I think this was something Nick Saban, he didn't want him to leave, but I don't think he was really disappointed that he left, if that makes sense. I mean, if Wiggins came in with a decent amount of raise money that A&M was throwing him, let's say 300 or 400 extra, $500K, he'd probably go have fun in College Station. No hard feelings. I don't think they were recruiting to the level they should have been from a high school standpoint. I would say from that standpoint. But Holloman and Wiggins joining Texas A&M, Mike Elko, I think it's a win-win. I think Alabama could improve from that standpoint, but also I think it's a good hire by Texas A&M. Then we got Missouri State OC. Has to have the connection here, I'm assuming, with Bobby Petrino, the new OC at Arkansas. If you remember, the OC from Missouri State, Ronnie Fouch, he is the new wide receiver coach at Arkansas, taking over for Kenny Guyton, who left to go to Wisconsin, if you don't remember that. So that's an update in the league as well. And then South Carolina running backs coach, former Tennessee player, Montario Hardesty. Him and South Carolina are parting ways, going different directions. Heard that was a possibility. But those are just some of the coaching updates that I have missed that we're talking about heading in. Appreciate the comment there, Rudolph. Thank you. Keep up the good work. Appreciate you listening, Rudolph. Thanks for tuning in, brother. Noticed the chat, so I wanted to acknowledge it. But again, South Carolina running back coach Montario Hardesty, former Tennessee Volunteer, played running back under Lane Kiffin, if I remember right. Kind of on that 09 team, liked him a lot. But he's parting ways. Recruiting could have been a lot better. South Carolina, from a high school standpoint, really left a lot to be desired at that position. But transition over to the transfer portal, notable departures around the SEC. Really, it's going to be Ole Miss and Alabama had the extra window for their guys to enter the portal because they're in the playoffs. Alabama's had some guys enter the portal, some guys saying they're going to the NFL. And we had some guys that announced they're coming back in 24. But leading off, Quinshon Judkins, the Ole Miss running back, one of the better running backs in the SEC, top 3 easily. He's entering the portal. What I want to say about this is I don't think this is as big of a deal as people are making it out to be. I don't think it is. I think this is something that he was constantly coming. Let's just say at the beginning, I think they were happy to get anything because he was somewhat of an under-recruited kid. Ole Miss was kind of hung with him. Alabama or Auburn didn't really want him just right off the bat out of high school from Pike Road right outside of Montgomery. But remember, you see that picture of Lane Kiffin sitting there in the cold and the rain during one of his playoff games. But I think this is something that he kept coming back. And this is not really Quinshon Judkins' fault to some extent, you could say. It's just kind of a product of what's wrong with the sport right now. There's no contracts. There's no multi-year contracts. This is the only sport in the world that does this, where he also has 2 more transfers left, technically. He has his one-time transfer when he graduates. So he's still got 2 more transfers. So he could come to Ole Miss every month, dang near about, like, hey, I want you pay me $800. All right, I want $900. All right, I want 1. I want 1.2. He can keep coming back because he has all that leverage because he's not locked in. Again, I don't really blame Quinshon Judkins from that standpoint, but apparently he started to become a little bit of an issue in the locker room. Not spreading rumors here, just what I've been told. Ole Miss was not shocked by this. Some people were like, Ole Miss was taken back. They weren't. I'm talking to people I trust in the building, some top people. They were not shocked or taken back by this. They kind of expected it. Who's going to go after Quinshon Judkins? I bet a lot of people are going to go after Quinshon Judkins. Initially, people are going to throw Alabama or Auburn because he's from Montgomery or right outside Montgomery Pike Road. I mean, that would make sense. I've heard LSU's kind of been thrown in there before. He'll have an open market. Georgia, I don't know, though, because they just got Trevor Etienne over from Florida. So that'll be interesting. I mean, he's going to have a lot of suitors. But again, this kid was wanting over $1 million, I'm hearing. He's not worth that at a running back position. Lane Kiffin's scheme, the spread out scheme, he wants to run in between the box. He wants to create space. I bet Ole Miss has a 1,000-yard rusher next year, and it may be Ulysses Bentley. And I know I know they lost another, the Miller kid. They lost him again. That was a third-string running back, entered the portal for Ole Miss today. But I think they're going to be fine. They have plenty of time to go find some depth in that room to help. Again, is it a loss? I'm debating a buddy right now on text message. Is it a loss? Sure. It definitely is a loss. Is it that big of a loss, and does it really lower Ole Miss's ceiling in regards to making a top 12-team playoff next year or finish in the top 4 of the SEC? No, because I still think we're going to talk about the most important game on every SEC team's schedule next year. We're going to look at the schedules. I think it's a manageable schedule. Lane Kiffin always has running backs. He's a product with the system. Will they be as good or have the ceiling as Quinshon Judkins? No. But you can go use that $1 million to go get depth on the defense, which is ultimately going to get you through the season because you know what, guys? Inevitably, injuries happen every year. I would rather have a 6th, 7th defensive lineman that if, hey, one of my top 1 or 2 guys on the defensive line, front 7 go down, I've throw it to an inside linebacker. Ole Miss has had some depth issues before. That can help because they have extra money to go around now. And one of the most organized NIL structures there is, the Grove Collective, led by Walker Jones. They do a fantastic job. One of the more, if not the most organized NIL collective in the country, in my opinion. But I think this money can be used better elsewhere, frankly. I really do. I mean, look at Michigan, how deep Michigan is on the defensive line. And a lot of that's high school kids. I mean, that Cam Good who came over from UCF, who's a depth guy. But Michigan has the best defensive line, deepest defensive line. They rotate guys, not a lot of drop-off. I would use this money on maybe another extra body on the offensive line. Ole Miss saw it. They lost 2 offensive linemen in their last few weeks of the season, and it cost them against Georgia. They lost Micah Pettis in practice that week. You're inevitably going to lose guys to injuries. We don't talk about that enough in the offseason going into the season. And again, I'm not going to predict an injury for every team going into next season. I'm just not going to do that. But they inevitably happen for all 16 teams. Again, tell me I'm on it, baby. I'm used to saying 14, but I got my mind trained to say 16 now when talking football. We got Oklahoma and Texas joining us. But my point being, all 16 teams are going to accumulate injuries. It's all about survival. Each week, you have to have depth. You have to have depth to win in this conference. You really do. It's not about some big-time running back. And again, Quinshon Judkins was nicked up a lot this year. I think Ole Miss can use this money elsewhere. This is a loss. But I think it would be a bigger loss, and I was arguing on social media, if it was Jackson Dart, because Jackson Dart plays the most important position in all of sports. Yes, the quarterback position in the sport of football is the most important position in all of sports. It's not even close. More important than some ace pitcher, more important than a point guard, shooting guard, center. I'm talking about the big 3 there. Yeah, besides the individual sports, it's the most important. In team sports, the quarterback position in the sport of football is the most important position in sports. No doubt about it. Jackson Dart will be going to his 3rd year in the system. I would much rather lose Quinshon Judkins any day of the week, twice on Sunday, compared to losing Jackson Dart. Call me crazy, but I think this money can be used elsewhere. This may be a blessing in disguise from a adding depth standpoint. Ole Miss has some money to play with heading into the back half or the front half of this to finish up this portal window through January and heading in to post-spring. So I like where everything is from this standpoint. For the Rebs from NIL Collective, again, calm down, Ole Miss fans. Everything's all right. Your team, your coach saw this coming. It was inevitable. kind of like in the NFL. The NFL running back market is what it is. These NFL running backs complain they don't get paid enough. I mean, the market is what it is. Your shelf life is short. And at the end of the day, I would get tired of Quinshon Judkins having the leverage over me and every month, every semester, every transfer portal window coming and be like, hey, I need X amount or I'm out. I would open the door up for him the other day when he told me he was entering the portal. So putting a bow on that. Other transfer portal notable departures, Seth McLaughlin, the center for Alabama. He's entered the portal. Looks like he should be taking an official visit to Ohio State. Remember, us Mock 10 Sports, we broke the news on, what was that? Tuesday night. Yep, Tuesday night that he was entering the portal from Alabama. I think the last 24, 36 hours had been a lot for him. It'd been a lot. I think he took a lot of beating. He had a lot of bad snaps in that Rose Bowl. Not going to say Alabama lost just because of him. He was a big reason. But again, I think some other schools, a couple other schools in the SEC called me yesterday asking about him. I don't have a real great relationship, but I know some people who know him, so I know what kind of they're thinking. I think he's interested in Oregon, Texas, but he's taking an OV to Ohio State. They're all interested to see if he can play another interior spot, maybe guard, not center. So we'll go on that. Elijah Pritchett, an offensive tackle for Alabama. He's entering the portal. Wide receiver Shaz Preston, he's entering the portal. Miles Kittleson, tight end from Alabama, he'll enter the portal. Terrence Ferguson, an offensive guard from Alabama, has entered the portal. Blake Benson, the number one wide receiver at JUCO last year, he is entered the portal for Alabama. Corner star, some dime back, Earl Little, Alabama fans will know. Christian Story, safety, he's entered the portal as well. Some NFL opt-outs or entries. Dallas Turner is going to be entering, Chris Braswell, Kool-Aid McKinstry, Terry Arnold. No real surprise out of those four. Maybe the only one who was really questioning it would be Terry Arnold. Had a great year this year, probably had a better year overall than Kool-Aid McKinstry, but all four of those guys will be going to the NFL draft. And Alabama got some good news today. Running back Rodell Williams saying he's coming back. Safety star Malachi Moore announcing he's going to be back. It is feel like Malachi Moore was at Alabama when I was in school there. Hewitt Trustful native, feels like he's been at Alabama forever. And then linebacker Deontay Lawson announced he will be back for 2024 as well. Tight end CJ Dupree will be back. And then punter James Burnett will be back as well, who had a hell of a game in the Rose Bowl. Really kept Alabama in it in the first half, second half. Alabama special teams was phenomenal on Monday in Pasadena. But both those guys, CJ Dupree at the tight end spot and James Burnett will be back. So Alabama got some good news and probably some expected news. I mean, you expected Kool-Aid McKinstry. Terry Arnold, you maybe left some hope out, and then I had some hope he'd return. Chris Braswell, obviously, and then Dallas Turner. You know those guys would be out. Some shocker would be Rodell Williams, maybe coming back. And so that's good news. Never have enough depth at running back. And then Malachi Moore coming back. He kind of disappeared. He didn't have a great game on Monday, so I think he could come back, help himself. And Deontay Lawson, again, another guy, got mixed up on all the crossing routes. Sharon Moore, Michigan's OC, I thought schemed them up pretty well. So Deontay Lawson has some stuff to work on. Alabama's going to be good on defense. I expect the secondary to be pretty solid. I know they lose both corners, but Trey Amos and the Jackson kid coming over from USC should help with that, and the Ricks kid as well. So we'll see with that. A lot of spring. We got a whole winter conditioning, spring, summer, all that to figure that out. But again, it's Alabama. They're going to reload. I feel like they have some good pieces heading in to next year. But like I mentioned, sitting there talking to my father-in-law, wanted to just talk a little bit about the most important game, single game as we stand on January 4th for every SEC team heading into the 24th season. So let's lead it off. We're going to go in alphabetical order. I'm going to share a screen here for you. Lead off with the Crimson Tide of Alabama. You know what? I actually went this one. I mean, this one was a pretty bit easy layup. I'm going to go with the September 28th matchup. What is that? Week 5, technically. Georgia at home at Bryant-Denny Stadium. I mean, it's Alabama, Georgia. It is what it is. Again, I don't think Alabama's schedule is as tough as some people are making out. But if Alabama wins this game, you feel pretty good. They don't lose they may drop one, but they're not going to lose 2. They win that, Alabama's feeling pretty good about their chances of finishing in the top 2 and getting back to Atlanta. Remember, this is a divisionless league next year. Not every team plays each other. 16 teams, top 2 records are going to get in. Some argue maybe the best spot to be in would be that 3 team that's not having to play that extra game, risk some injuries. But it is what it is. I think this one's easy. This one's a layup. Alabama playing Georgia in that first first conference game. College game day will be there. If Alabama can get that done It would go a long way. You'd feel good because I think they got a lot. They got a manageable path from that perspective right there. So moving on to the next team. We're not going to LSU. We're going to go to Arkansas first. We're going to go alphabetical order. Going to the Razorbacks. I'm going to get right to it, guys. Before we even get into conference play, for Arkansas, the most important game in 2024. This is a massive year for Sam Pittman. Brought in Bobby Petrino, who some think may be the next coach of the OC, but I think it has to get off to a good start. It's that September 7th matchup at Oklahoma State at Boone-Pickens Stadium. Oklahoma State's going to be solid again, finished runner-up in the Big 12 last year. Arkansas's got to have this. I don't know who's going to be quarterback for them. Is it the Taylor Jackson kid? Is it Jacoby Criswell? I don't know, but they have to win this game. They have to win this game before we start talking about any conference play. They lose this game, you're going to lose a lot of momentum heading into conference play, and you go at Auburn 2 weeks later. You get Texas A&M and then Tennessee, as you can see this. I mean, Arkansas didn't get totally screwed like they normally do with the schedule, but still a tough SEC schedule. You want to win all your non-conference games in a year that your head coach has to have it. You lose to Oklahoma State, who Arkansas fans probably think they're better than if you really ask them. It's not a good start. You can get a lot of murmurs, a lot of voices started. Message board rumors are going to be all over the place. It wouldn't be good for Sam Pittman. He has to win this week 2 matchup. Has to win this week 2 matchup. Heading on to our next team, our third team, the Auburn Tigers. The Auburn Tigers. I went through this. I went back and forth. I wanted to go Oklahoma. But no, Hugh Freeze's second year, and I think he underachieved this year. I talked about it on the SEC Uncensored show we did on January 1st on New Year's Day. I think it's at Missouri, that Saturday, October 19th matchup. I think it's at Missouri. You lose that game. That's a game Auburn fans aren't used to losing. They're not used to losing to Missouri. I think you got to have that one because I think Missouri's going to be solid next year. If you lose that, it's your first road game. I think some people are not talking. It's just I think that's a game Auburn fans will not accept losing. I just think it's a game Auburn fans will not accept losing. If I'm being completely honest with you from that standpoint, that would be a tough pill to swallow. That would be a tough pill to swallow because I think Missouri's going to have some stuff back. That's just not a game they're going to be accustomed to losing. So you go and lose that. That'll be a tough matchup. I went back and forth that one. You could make a case for me that Week 5 Oklahoma matchup. But overall, I'm going to go at Missouri. They need to win that game. Hugh Freeze needs to win that game. Auburn's a better program than Missouri. You go lose that, it looks like you're taking a step back. It's no offense towards Missouri. That's a game Auburn expects to win. But again, you can make a case 1A, 1B, the Missouri matchup and the Oklahoma matchup. But moving on to our next team, the Florida Gators. Let's go to Florida right here. Florida. Yep, here we go. Pull it up right there. For me, it was week 1. You got to win the Miami game. You have to win the Miami game. I don't know how you don't win the Miami. That's a must-win for Billy Napier. Look at the schedule here. Miami, A&M, at State, UCF. They play all 3 of the big schools in State. That's a must-win. You got to win that game. It's going to be a big game for Mario Cristobal in them. But if I had to circle one game right now that Billy Napier has to win due to it being a in-state rival, and it's just you want to get off to a good start, 1-0. Be a tough pill to swallow at home, losing to Miami in a winnable game. It's Miami. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. I think that is the must-win in 24 for the Gators. The Georgia Bulldogs. Some people want to say it's Alabama. Bounce this one off some people, some ideas. They disagree with me here. I'm going to go October. I always go back and forth on this one. I'm going to go. Let me share the screen again. I'm going to go the Texas game. I'm going to go the Texas game. Yeah, I'm gonna go to the Texas game here. I keep going back and forth. It could be the Alabama game. They got to split those games. But I think, say they lose to Alabama and Brighton, they could easily win that game. Either way, if they lose, they got to have the Texas game. If they win, they beat Alabama, they almost lock up an SEC championship spot if they beat Texas. So either way, that Texas game is big. Either they got to have it, they're almost locking up a spot in Atlanta. So I think their first trip to DKR, Darrell K. Royal Stadium on October 19th is the first must-win for Georgia. Not must-win, the most important game of the season right now. Going in to the 24 season, I think this is the most important game of the year because they need to have it, must have it, or they can almost lock up a spot because I don't really see them next year losing to Florida. Even if they lost at Ole Miss, wouldn't hurt them if they're 2-0. Tennessee at home, I think they have that. UMass at home, and then Georgia Tech. Another winnable one for Georgia, but I think the most important game right now is that at Texas matchup. Pulling up the next one for you. I think this one's relatively easy. It's early in the year. Let's get the graphic rolling up here. For the Kentucky Wildcats, I think that must-win's got to be South Carolina. That Saturday, September 7th game at Kroger Field at home. You would think they'd start off 1-0 against Southern Miss, but week 2, I think this is going to be the most important game for South Carolina as well. I got 2 or 3, I think, off the top of my head, that are most important games for both teams in these matchups. I think this South Carolina game, week 2, you got to start off 1-0 in conference play. The league's too tough now with adding Texas and Oklahoma, and they get at Texas towards the back half of the year. So I think this South Carolina game is very important for both teams to get off to 1-0 in the league. For Kentucky. Heading to our next game. We're not going to go to Ole Miss. We're going to skip over to LSU, which is why I like this FBS website. You can skip ahead. But for LSU, the most important game of the season, again, I told you, I have a couple of them where both teams are the same most important game. For LSU here, I think it's the October 12th Ole Miss game at home. You hadn't lost Ole Miss at home since 2008 with Houston Nutt. Yes, that was how long ago that Ole Miss beat LSU in Baton Rouge. I was texting a buddy about it today. They asked. I looked it up. I was like, God, 2008, freshman in college. But this is an important game for LSU. I mean, you could make the case to right off the bat the USC matchup in Vegas. But I think that Ole Miss matchup, because LSU fans, Ole Miss had a good year this past year, and they lost, and LSU lost to Ole Miss in that shootout in Oxford. But LSU still expects to beat Ole Miss, especially at home. This would be a tough one for Brian Kelly. This would be a tough loss, I think, if he were to lose this one at home. I think this is the most important because it's an SEC game and it's at home, a place you're accustomed to beating this team against a solid program who you're probably going to be competing with for one of those top 4 spots in the league. So I think the LSU-Ole Miss matchup is the big one right now for the Tigers. Moving on to I talked about Ole Miss. I'll pull up the schedule. It's the same game, though. It's the same game, but I'll pull it up just so you can see it. But it is that October 12th matchup. That October 12th at LSU. Again, they have not won since 2008 in Baton Rouge. Lane Kiffin in a very manageable schedule. I think they should roll into Baton Rouge undefeated. They should beat Furman, should beat Middle Tennessee, should win at Wake, should beat Georgia Southern, beat Kentucky at South Carolina. They beat LSU. They're going to their first bye week feeling pretty good. Because they get both Oklahoma and Georgia at home. If they got one of those, woo, you're feeling pretty good. In Arkansas, I think they're going to be better in Arkansas next year. As we stand right now on January 4th, again, a lot can happen. Then at Florida, I mean, Billy Napier may be gone at that point. I'm not wishing that. It's just that's reality. It could happen. It's the second to last weekend of the season. You'll be putting your turkey in the oven for Thanksgiving by that point. But again, Ole Miss wins this game because I expect them to be undefeated rolling into that LSU game. They win that game. They headed their bye week with a real shot if they can split the Oklahoma game at home. And what's Oklahoma going to be? I like Jackson Arnold, but he didn't look great in that Alamo Bowl against Arizona. And again, I like him. That's not a big deal. Where are they going to be at that point? Brent Venables' third year. Ole Miss could be sitting pretty if they go win that game. Moving on to our next one. Mississippi State Bulldogs. Remember, we got some extra ones we got to show. The Mississippi State Bulldogs pulling up the schedule here. The most important game, in my opinion, for the Bulldogs next year. I know a couple buddies going out there. It's that week 2. It's not a conference game. It's the week 2 matchup. Jeff Levy's first big game, September 7th at Arizona State in Tempe. At Arizona State, the Sun Devils in Tempe. It will be Rob Kenny Dillingham, the new head coach at Arizona State, his second year. It'll be his second year. He'll need this big win against similar offensive approach with Jeff Lebby in his first year. This would be a massive win. That's an overterm. I shouldn't say massive. It would be a big win for Jeff Lebby in his first year, his first Power 5 matchup in the Big Ten, if he could get this done. Again, Arizona State may end up not being very good next year, but it's a game they need to win. They need to win this matchup, in my opinion. So that's therefore why the most important game. It's a very important game. I wasn't ready to put any of these conference games on yet because they may be underdogs in all of them except Arkansas. You just don't know. So I thought realistically, the most important game of the year is that week 2 at Arizona State. Next, we got the Missouri Tigers. The most important game on the schedule, in my opinion, for the Missouri Tigers. It's against former Big 12 brethren, the October 5th matchup, heading to Kyle Field, Eli Drinkwitz and the boys at Texas A&M. I think it's a big matchup. I mean, looking at the schedule right there, their first 4, Murray State, Buffalo, Boston College, and Vanderbilt. Then a bye week before this matchup. They should be 4-0 heading into this matchup. At Texas A&M, that's a big one. They feel pretty good about themselves hosting Auburn. And remember, I said there's a big win for Auburn. I keep saying must. Most important win, or most important game for Auburn will be Missouri. Missouri be feeling pretty good about hosting Auburn if they were to win at A&M. It's potentially doable. I think that would be a massive win for Eli Drinkwitz. In year, what was that, 2020, 21, 22, 20? In year 5, coming off an 11-win season and a Cotton Bowl. I think that would be another big win, another great season for Eli Drinkwitz. They can get that. They'll be getting the ball rolling and in the right direction if they can win that game at Kyle Field. Again, we got a couple other teams to roll through here. Next up, the Oklahoma Sooners are next. Most important game of the season for the new kid on the block, the Oklahoma Sooners. In my opinion, it's that week 4 matchup, September 21st. Their former national championship winning quarterback, Josh Heupel, brings in his Tennessee Volunteers to Gaylord Family Oklahoma Memorial Stadium. This is one of those. This is the most important game on Tennessee's schedule heading into this season right now. It's kind of a springboard game. As early as this is, again, January 4th, we got a long way away from September 21st. But this is kind of a springboard game, in my opinion, for both teams. Both teams will feel really good about themselves leaving this matchup with a win. Again, Jackson Arnold, Nico Amalavea, should be a great quarterback matchup. Heupel's not too fond of his former alma mater. People talk about maybe if Venables didn't work out, does Josh Heupel get that job? I mean, if he goes and lights up Oklahoma, just wins the game, a lot of people are going to want him for the job, but apparently it was a little sour by the way Bob Stoops fired him. He didn't really like that. Probably should stick at Tennessee, but conversation for another day. But I think it's a massive matchup for both Tennessee and Oklahoma. One of my favorite early matchups of the year. I'm getting excited to talk about this matchup. A lot of storylines, a lot of springboard, especially with the SEC, how tough it is now. Again, still only 8 conference games, but a lot tougher when adding Texas and Oklahoma. So I think this is a massive game for Oklahoma and both Tennessee heading into this one. Next, we got the South Carolina Gamecocks rolling in. What is the most important game on their schedule heading in to the 24 season? Pull it up. For South Carolina, I mentioned it. It's that week 2, just like for Kentucky. I think it's a most important game for both these teams. For Kentucky and South Carolina, getting 1-0. You got to get as many wins as possible against the teams in your tier. Sorry, Missouri had a great year this year, but Missouri's in that tier with South Carolina and Kentucky. They are. Those teams, if you're going to have a good year in the SEC, you're in that group with those teams, you need to have success against those teams in your tier, if that makes sense. Like if Kentucky wants to go get to that 9, back to that 10 win level, they're going to have to go undefeated against South Carolina when they play them now, Missouri when they play them now, Mississippi State, who they used to be their Common West opponent team all the time. I mean, even A&M, throw them in there a little bit. They're going to have to win those games. So first conference game, big for both South Carolina and Kentucky. Again, I think this is both South Carolina and Kentucky's most important game of their 24 seasons as we stand today. For Tennessee, and I mentioned Tennessee, I think that we'll go to their schedule right here real quick. But I think for Tennessee, that Oklahoma matchup, like I mentioned, is that big one for Josh Heupel, going back to his alma mater there. I think that's a massive matchup for Tennessee. Again, I'm fired up just to kind of talk about that game just in general, but I think we got a lot going on with that one. But again, you see it right there at Oklahoma, September 21st, massive matchup. That's only the fourth game for Tennessee. Again, Chattanooga, NC State, Kent State, and then at Oklahoma. Big tone setter game here. I talked about it with Oklahoma. Next we got 3 left, guys. Another new kid on the block here. Let me go to it. Pull it up for you. Let's pull up the Texas Longhorn schedule here. I think the most important game on their schedule. Most important game on their schedule. It's that Georgia game. Some A&M people, some Texas people may call me crazy, and I've worked at A&M. Texas takes this game, granted they hadn't played since 2011, but Texas A&M takes this game a little more serious than Texas does. I may get killed for that by my A&M following, but I think for Texas, they've made the playoffs this year. They're starting to become established. I think they're wanting to go pound for pound with the big boys. This Georgia game for them at home, massive matchup. Man, again, right after Oklahoma. But again, if they only have one loss after this and they beat Georgia, even if they lose, they're feeling pretty good about the way to end the year. It's not a tough stretch, as we know right now. At Vandy, Florida, at Arkansas, Kentucky, and at Texas A&M, all doable. Again, they at Michigan, probably the best non-conference matchup of the season. But again, I think Georgia, they're ready to fight in their weight class. I think they're a weight class above Texas A&M as we stand right now. So they want to go face Georgia. I think that's a bigger game for them heading into their first year of the SEC than it is against their fellow Lone Star State rival in Texas A&M. I think it is. And call me crazy with the next one. You're going to be like, well, Dave, wow, you said Texas's biggest game of the year, most important game of the year next year is Oklahoma. Why wouldn't Texas A&M or Georgia? Why wouldn't Texas A&M have somebody else? Their biggest game of the year is Texas. The last game of the year, November 30th. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Texas is their biggest game. They've been looking forward to this. They worked hard to get this home game at Kyle Field for the first time since these two teams have played in, 13 years? This is a massive one for Mike Elko in his first year. He doesn't have to win it, but, man, it would go a long way. It would go a long way of those Aggie fans backing him up if he could get a win at home on November 30th. But I think that's their biggest game, our most important game heading into the 24 season. And then finally, let me go to them here. Biggest game of next year, most important next year for the Vanderbilt Commodores. I mean, all of them are important, but they need to get a conference win. I'm going to go that November 9th South Carolina matchup at home. I mean, it all depends what Sellers kid's doing at quarterback for South Carolina. But again, I think this is the most winnable conference game next year. I mean, let's look at the schedule. I mean, at Missouri, I think they're going to be pretty good next year. Alabama at Kentucky, Texas at Auburn, South Carolina at LSU, and Tennessee. I mean, yeah, South Carolina at home is probably the most winnable game. I think that's the most important game. Whatever Vanderbilt's most winnable conference game is the most important game. I think it's pretty easy to say. So I think that is Vanderbilt's most important game of the season, that November 9th matchup against South Carolina. But so just wanted to talk about that. I told you that conversation started with me breaking it down with my father-in-law, breaking down his Tennessee schedule. So I want to what is the most important game for all 16 teams heading into the 24 season? I just gave it to you. But like I mentioned, we're wrapping up football. Football's always going. It's a 24/7, 365 sport covered all the time, as we all know. But again, it's opening weekend in SEC basketball. Joe Lenardi right now, I know it's early. He's got projected the SEC leading all conferences with 9 NCAA tournament teams right now. Pulling it up for you. As we stand right now, Joey brackets 9 teams. He's got Tennessee in as a 2 seed, Kentucky a 3 seed, Auburn a 5, Alabama a 6 seed, Texas A&M a 6 seed, Ole Miss an 8 seed, the Rebels undefeated, Florida number 10 seed, one of the last buys, Mississippi State a 10 seed, and then South Carolina an 11 seed, last buy. Another team to keep an eye on, Arkansas, big matchup this upcoming weekend. But again, as we head into conference play, the SEC projected to have 9 teams in the NCAA tournament right now. I think it gets a little bit more towards 8. It's like I broke it down 2 episodes, I believe, ago. I mean, I think if you're Tennessee, Kentucky, Auburn, Alabama, Texas A&M, you feel pretty good right now that you're probably in the tournament. You feel pretty good. I know Ole Miss is undefeated, but the analytics and stuff don't like them right now. I think they got to probably finish 10-8 to get it. So they have some work to do in conference play. Same with Florida, same with Mississippi State, same with South Carolina. And I know Arkansas is like 87th in the net right now. Not a good net ranking heading into conference play. Great opportunity this weekend. We'll talk about it in a minute. But I think you throw them in there too. That's 10 that I feel confident that will be competing for probably 8. I don't think the SEC gets 9 spots. I think they realistically get 8. Unfortunately, I think Missouri, Georgia have a lot of work cut out for them. Just the net rankings aren't great. I think Georgia's a solid basketball team. I mean, you put them – I struggle with them every week in power rankings. Like, why do I have these guys 10th or 11th? They're better than that. They're not great, but they're better than that. But again, just not a lot of great work done in the non-conference slate. And then I just think LSU and definitely Vanderbilt are just too far gone unless something crazy happens. But let's get into it. Let me pull up the big schedule for you heading in the first week of conference play. As you can see right here, you got the first tip-off of the day, the 11 a.m. Central Standard Time Zone tip. Mississippi State at South Carolina on CBS, 11:30 Central. Kentucky at Florida on ESPN. That's a big matchup right there. We got a couple of great ones. 12 p.m. Central Standard Time Zone, Georgia at Missouri on the SEC Network. 1 p.m. Central Standard Time Zone, probably my favorite matchup of the day. I know Ole Miss and Tennessee, but Auburn and Arkansas. Auburn heading in there with a Razorback team with their back against the wall. This is where Muss thrives. That's on ESPN2. 2:30 matchup at Memorial. Alabama at Vanderbilt on the SEC Network. 5 p.m. Central Standard Time Zone, Ole Miss at Tennessee on the SEC Network. And 7:30 the nightcap, LSU at Texas A&M on the SEC Network. But I'm going to quickly preview all these games for you real quick. Like I said, starting with Mississippi State coming in 11-2 at South Carolina, 12-1, 11 a.m. Central Standard Time Zone on CBS. Under the radar game. Both solid teams here. For South Carolina, this is a chance to notch their best win of the season at home. For Mississippi State, your next 3 games after this will be tough, so you need it. Tennessee at home, Alabama at home, at Kentucky. You need to get this one. Most realistic win in your first 4. State, still their typical selves, play good defense, just like a Chris Jan's team usually does. They don't force a lot of turnovers, but they're tough. Offensively, still not a great shooting team, but they're better. I mean, they brought in the likes of Josh Hubbard, true freshman who's shooting 39% from 3, doing a phenomenal job. South Carolina, Lamont Paris, a much improved team. Obviously, Michi Johnson doing a phenomenal job at the guard spot. And I always like what they do with their big guy in the front court, B.J. Mack. Good passer, can score, can shoot some threes. He's been a big contributor to them. And even the Vanderbilt transfer, Miles Stute, getting it done from beyond the arc. Ken Pom has this as a Mississippi State 70-69 winner as of right now, giving Mississippi State a 52% chance of winning. I like Mississippi State in this one as well. I think it's going to be a close game as well. Agree with Ken Pom a little bit here. I like Mississippi State in this one. Next one, Kentucky going to Gainesville at 10-2. Florida coming in 10-3, 11 a.m. Central Standard Time Zone tip on ESPN. Big opportunity for Florida at home here. A team that really hasn't been healthy altogether here. No long-term issues, but good guards Florida has. Riley Kugel, we know him. Zion Poole, Walter Clayton, the transfer from Iona. They do a phenomenal job. They're fantastic on the boards. One of the best rebounding teams in the league. Gritty team. I think they have a real shot to beat Kentucky at home. Great opportunity. Kentucky likes to get after it from a style standpoint. Rob Dillingham, Antonio Reeves, Reed Shepherd, shooting 56% from 3. Dude. All 3 of those guys, Dillingham, Reeves, and Shepherd, shoot over 44% from 3. Something new for Kentucky over the past 4 years. That more consistent shooting. Now, defensively, Kentucky can leave a lot to be desired at times because they get focused on their tempo and style offensively. Cal's got to reel that in. Ken Pom currently has this game as a Kentucky 86-85 1-point win, with the Cats having a 52% chance of winning. I like Florida to get probably the biggest win of the Todd Golden era. Yeah, give me the Gators. I like the Gators to get a close win at home. They need it. These are the kind of wins they need to get at home if they want to be an NCAA tournament team. I think they get it done. Again, biggest win in the Todd Golden era. I think they get it done at home this week against a good Kentucky team. Georgia coming in 10-3 at Missouri, facing Missouri team 8-5 at the 12 p.m. Central Standard Time Zone tip on the SEC Network. Both teams on the outside looking in from the NCAA tournament standpoint, like I mentioned. Both need this win as well, as Missouri has Kentucky South Carolina, and Alabama after this. And when you're in Missouri's spot, you can't be losing these conference home games. Georgia, again, not a bad basketball team. Not a bad basketball team at all. But they have to come on strong to start the conference season. They do. I mean, you need a big game here out of Noah Tomlinson or Jabir Abdur-Rahim. Need one of them to step up. But from a KenPom standpoint, KenPom has this as a 74-71 Missouri win, and with the Tigers having a 66% chance of winning. I'm going to disagree here with KenPom, just like I did with the Florida-Kentucky game. In a couple of these games out of these 7, I disagree with KenPom. I'm going to go with Georgia. I think Georgia's the better team heading to conference play. I think they get a close win, maybe end up being 8-9 point win. Again, I don't give exact predictions for basketball games. Free throw is at the end, mess all that up. But I think Georgia wins this game, gets a big win for Mike White, big SEC road win to start conference play. And then heading over to Fayetteville, my favorite matchup, intriguing matchup of the day. Auburn 11-2, heading to Fayetteville, facing an Arkansas team 9-4, 1 p.m. Central Standard Time Zone on ESPN2. Arkansas needs this game, especially with it being at home. Toughest environment to play at in the SEC. Arkansas is currently 86th in net rankings. They need this win. Auburn's a quad 1 win. Auburn's one of the deeper teams in the league. They're one of the few teams that are top 20 in both offensive efficiency and defensive efficiency numbers, according to KenPom. They go 9 deep pretty easily. I mean, Janai Baroom's their guy, the workhorse. Aiden Holloway, when he's hot, he's hot. Trey Donaldson, Jalen Williams, K.D. Johnson we know about, Chris Moore, Dylan Cardwell, Chad Baker-Mazzaro out of the portal's been for him, and Denver Jones coming over from FIU. They're a deep team, one of the deeper teams that Bruce Pearl can sub some guys out and there's not a big drop-off. The key for me in this one, though, will be how well does Auburn shoot the basketball from outside on Saturday. Arkansas does a really good job of protecting the rim with guys like Trevon Brazile, and they're not getting shots blocked at the rim. Arkansas gets the rim and doesn't get a lot of shots blocked. KenPom currently has Auburn winning this one, though, 81-77, with Auburn having a 67% chance of winning this one. I think it's a little high. And again, I'm going to disagree with KenPom here. Muss is at his best when he has his back against the wall and they need to win this one. It's at home. They can't start off slow in conference play like they have. Right now, KenPom has them starting off 0-4 in conference play between games against Auburn, Georgia, A&M, I think at Kentucky is who it is. I have to look it up, but he has them going 0-4 when I was looking at it today. They can't start off slow like they did last year. They can't. They need it. I think they get it. I think Arkansas, with their backs against the wall at home, with the home crowd, if this game was at Auburn, I don't think Arkansas wins this game. No way. But I think they get it done at home. I think Muss knows this. He's aware enough to know this is a big game for them. They need to start off better than they have in the last 2 years in conference play. Give me Arkansas. Give me Arkansas getting the close win at home against a good Auburn team. I think it's a top 3 team who has a real shot to go past the first weekend. I think Auburn's a second weekend team, if not higher, from the SEC in the NCAA tournament right now. Then probably our weakest matchup of the day. Alabama 8-5, number 5 in KenPom, at Vanderbilt 5-8, 2:30 p.m. Central Standard Time Zone tip on the SEC Network. As you know, Alabama's played a top 3 schedule all year. The analytics love the Tide. They come in at top 5 in KenPom net rankings. It's the highest in the SEC, and they have 5 losses. Bama sits at number 1 in offensive efficiency numbers in the country. They face some really good defensive teams: Purdue, Creighton. Granted, Creighton had some guys out due to an injury. And then Arizona's a good defensive team. So Alabama gets their points no matter what. They put up 500-point performances. They put up 5 different, 100-point performances. So Bama always gets theirs. But again, Alabama defensively, they're 72 in defensive efficiency. That's got to get better if they want to win their 3rd SEC championship in 4 years. Jerry Stackhouse and Vanderbilt, on the other hand, are just not a good basketball team right now. The doors are really bad on defense. You may see Alabama. There's a good shot Alabama gets their 600-point game of the season. Now, Vandy probably played their best game in a loss at Memphis a couple weeks ago. So if you get that Vanderbilt team and Alabama's not improving on the defensive end, you could have a game here at the end. And I think Nate Oates is probably going to be telling his team that. Can Vanderbilt bring that same energy? Bama needs to match it. I don't think so. I'd be shocked if Alabama doesn't start the year 1-0 in conference play. And then the big one from a national perspective, a lot of people are going to be talking about Ole Miss 13-0, heading to Tennessee, Thompson-Boling Arena, 10-3, 5 p.m. Central Standard Time Zone tip on the SEC Network. Like I said, the most nationally relevant game because Ole Miss is undefeated. Chris Beard against arguably top 2 team in the SEC in Tennessee. Chris Beard and the Rebs head in undefeated. People want to see how this Ole Miss team competes in a tough environment against the top 2 team in the league. I know I do. I don't necessarily have to see Ole Miss win this game. I just want to see them compete. The Vols are your typical Tennessee team. They already have 3 losses, but to 3 top 10 teams, Purdue, North Carolina, and Kansas. again, Tennessee plays really good defense like they always do, but they're an improved offensive team this year with Northern Colorado transfer Dalton Connect. Now, he's cooled down a little bit recently, but they've stepped it up. They got to fit to see where Zakai Ziegler and Santiago Vescovi fit into this lineup. The Rebs, obviously a much improved team, especially offensively. Matt Morrell looks more comfortable offensively this year. And also, you got to add in additions, the transfer portal additions. Alan Flanagan from Auburn, who SEC fans are familiar with. His dad is a coach now, left Bruce Pearl at Auburn. Now he's with Chris Beard. And then St. Peter's transfer, Jalen Murray, been a massive addition. But at the end of the day, I think the Rebs compete, but I think Tennessee pulls away in the second half. I actually agree with kind of the score here with Kimpom. Kimpom has this being a 79-65 win, and they give Tennessee a 90% chance of winning this game. I agree with Kimpom there. I think it's going to be close in the first half, but I think this is a game because, Rick Barnes is going to have his team ready. Ole Miss hasn't played a team like Tennessee yet. Now, granted, Ole Miss has beaten a Memphis team that has given SEC teams hell. Ole Miss is the only team to beat Memphis from the SEC. I think Memphis is 4-1 against the SEC. They beat A&M. Who else? They beat A&M. They beat Georgia. I'd have to look at it. They're 3-1, 4-1. I have to go look at it. Memphis is a good team, obviously led by Javon Quinterly. But Memphis has success against the SEC this year. Lone loss, though, at Ole Miss. So give Ole Miss credit there. But I think it's going to be a tough game. But I think Ole Miss goes and shows you, hey, we're an improved team. If they can go get 500, 10-8 in the SEC play, fantastic first year for Chris Beard and his Ole Miss team. And then the final matchup of the night, LSU 8-5, heading to College Station, Reed Arena, 9-4, facing a 9-4 Texas A&M team, 7:30 p.m. Central Standard Time Zone on the SEC Network. These two teams play twice in this month. They play again January 20th, back-to-back. It's quick. But LSU, they've gotten better since they've gotten Jalen Cook, the former LSU player, former Tulane Greenway player. Once that eligibility rule came out, he's been playing. They're not a great team, but with Cook, they'll be able to compete with these teams on most nights and maybe sneak up on someone they're playing their best. Now, they're more inclined to probably do that at the PMAC, the Pete Maravich Assembly Center, where LSU, their home games are played. But this game's played at Reed Arena, so I don't see that. A&M been somewhat underwhelming in the non-conference play a little bit, especially in that Orlando tournament. For whatever reason, that invitational in Orlando, the Disney one, SEC teams don't play well in it, but conversation for another day. But these are the type of games A&M and Buzz Williams can't lose, especially at home. They're getting Boots Radford back, one of their better guards, to go with Wade Taylor III or Wade Taylor IV. And as you can tell, this team is a much more complete group with Boots Radford out there. Once again, I think this should be a solid win for Texas A&M. I tend to agree with Kimpom here as I have A&M winning this one 80-67, and they're giving A&M an 87% chance of winning this. I agree with that. I think A&M is going to get this one. But that is the first Saturday preview of SEC action right there. Got a lot of good matchups. I think Kimpom's right on some of them. I like Arkansas on a good upset, which I don't really think is some massive upset because they're at home. But I think the bigger upset that I got, I think Florida gets the home win, the biggest Todd Golden Arrow win so far in Gainesville. I think they beat Kentucky at home early. I really do. And then obviously Tennessee, Ole Miss, big matchup. People will be following nationally because of what Chris Beard has done at Ole Miss. But we have a fantastic weekend set up for non-conference play. We still got some portal stuff going on, some coaching changes. But really, we're locking into basketball, guys. Locking into basketball, fired up about it. We'll review those weekend matchups on Monday's episode. I'll actually be in Nashville for the AFCA Coaches Convention, so I'll give you any scoop I'm getting from over there. I'll keep you updated if I'm going to do a live show from the hotel on Monday night. I'm not, because we got the national championship. I know there's not SEC teams in, but again, we're not going to do a show on Monday night. Just keep following us. Again, like, subscribe, rate, review. Go subscribe. It's free on YouTube. Go subscribe. Keep we're getting great reviews, great watches on Twitter, X, whatever you call it now. But give us a follow at Mach 10 Sports on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, like I mentioned, YouTube. Again, I appreciate all y'all listening to the show. It's here, guys. Basketball season is upon us. Wrapping up the front end of football, but again, football never stops, 365, 24/7. But I appreciate you joining us on this episode of Mach 10 Sports. You have a fantastic weekend.